Hey everybody, my name's Eddie Brill and I'm the host of OG Talk, and I'm here with my assistant, but really the guy in charge of everything, Vlad Greenberg. Vlad, how are you today?
Hi, I'm good.
Yeah, that's it? You're just good?
Looking forward to our new guest.
Yes, you know, this is a guest that's a friend of yours that you've known for years. He's an incredible human being and is an activist, a musician, a runner, and a vegan, a new vegan.
Yeah, honestly, when I first met him, he really surprised me with how many diverse interests he has, how much passion and energy this guy has. And you'll see it really soon, and you'll agree with me.
Okay, let's take a look at our friend Polamalu.
They sucked the land dry like sugar cane, way before the hurricane. Irma came, Maria came, we were shamed when FEMA came. No help, they all false advertise, with all this red tape and patronize. While the government waits and stands aside, the authorities say that their hands are tied, and they can't do more although they want to. There's a chain of command that makes it hard to. They play underhand debates and argue. Only way is to stand, make them see our view. The media's bought to sell their pack of lies. They spin the report and the facts denied. We send out support and they hold supplies. Food stuck at the port while families die. Government officials letting everything slide. I'ma break it down for you if you're wondering why. I'ma tell you the real and what's happening inside. The snakes are making deals, their pockets are lined. So place your bid, the game is rigged. Look how they did the electric grid. Something's gotta give. We gotta get rid of these executives. It's a bottomless pit. Land grab. They scan in the land to build up resorts for their friends and fam. They going all across, expand is the plan. They got no remorse, they scam where they can. And nope, it ain't a threat, it's a promise instead. The no promesa set was to keep us in debt. They're taking the acres with hedge funds and banks. They're claiming to save us and telling us thanks. Keep the conversation going, the death toll is hidden. Congress needs to know that the debt must be forgiven. Obviously, we know we're neglected by the system. Now we need to grow independent and resist them. PR doesn't have a democracy. They want to keep us down with no pot to pee. We the people must demand food sovereignty and all our energy to be fossil free. The power back to the people. We could govern ourselves. Them cowards don't treat us equal. We should put them in jail. Don't want to see the sequel to this colony hell. The poverty is lethal, the economy fell. These regulations ruin the nation. The Jones Act passes expiration. Invasion, illegal occupation. We're facing forced evacuation. No breakfast, lunch, dinner, they need clean water fast. Toxic super funds and they're strapped for cash. Topic number one in the aftermath. We gotta free Puerto Rico, we don't have to ask.
And that was Polamalu, ladies and gentlemen. We're happy to have you here today. It's a real pleasure.
What's up, man?
Thank you. Everything's good. Yeah, you're a neighborhood guy.
Yeah.
Which is really awesome. You know, we're all neighborhood guys. Vlad actually has his restaurant in the neighborhood, but you were born here.
Yep, I was born and raised in LES. I was born on 10th Street and Avenue D, and my parents crossed over Houston and moved to Columbia Street to Mazurk Towers. So I was raised on LES.
Yeah, well, you know, here in the East Village, that when I first moved here, the 10th Street and Avenue D was not safe for human consumption.
Yeah, it was pretty dangerous. Well, people say it's dangerous, but for us, we kind of like grew up in it, so it was like our playground. So it wasn't really dangerous for us. It was kind of like free, open. You know, we play in the rubble. We would go to the East River Park. We would play in the amphitheater, the abandoned house. You know, we would get chased by homeless or people that were probably getting over heroin.
Why were you chased by the homeless? Why would they chase you?
Oh, because we were messing with them. They were sleeping at the amphitheater. So we would go in there and we would play tag. And then when we would see them, we were kids. We would just like mess with them and pull the sheets off of them, and they would chase us. Who knows what they could have done to us if they caught us? But
right, probably nothing.
They didn't catch us. I don't know. And we definitely like used it as an opportunity to get our exercise on because we were being chased by them left and right. So it was a good experience living in the Lower East Side as a kid, where people look at things as being dangerous. It was more an opportunity for us to explore and just like, you know, get into like some buildings that were open and kind of like use our imagination. We didn't have many playgrounds, so that was our playgrounds. You know, it was a opportunity for us to just like explore. We played manhunt, we played tag.
What was manhunt? What was that?
Manhunt, it was like a team thing. So we would kind of like look for each other, and you would have to be able to like catch, you know, the other team, and it was like involved a lot of hiding, and it was, you know,
It was hide and go seek, but it was more like,
yeah,
you know, I Spy or something like that.
Yeah, it was, and you know, you would dress up specifically for it. So
how would you dress up?
We would either wear all black, or at that time, like there was like a lot of Army and Navy stores, so we would be able to like grab some pants and act as if we were in the military, and we like get really into it, paint our faces with our mom's makeup. Like we would take like the black or the red and just like put it all over our faces.
That was early colors.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, as a child, whatever you're given, that's what you do. That's how you make of best of what you have.
Yeah.
And to other people, it might seem weird or crazy or not great for children. But children, you know, one thing I've learned through the years, excuse me, is that, you know, children can adapt to the community. Kids want to have a good time. They don't want to have a bad time.
Yeah, we would be on the roofs playing. Like we would get on top of the roofs and jump from roof to roof. And
wow.
Things like that. Yeah.
That was pretty dangerous.
The ones that were close, the buildings that were close, of course.
That's really
But
great.
also in this neighborhood, I can imagine this was a game, but it was kind of rules that you had to follow not to get in trouble, right? So you had to learn it really early, no?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always street rules, and you learn that as you get older. I mean, as a kid, you're not really like thinking about anything like that, but as you get older, you know, you learn to mind your business. You know, you see a deal going down on the corner, you don't stare, you kind of like glance at it and keep it moving. You know, you don't kind of be like, ooh, what's going on? You know, you just go about what you're doing and not worry too much about what other people are doing. And
yeah, you know, a lot of people say, you know, why I've left the city because I want to raise my children. I want to get out of New York City. My nephew was born and raised in the East Village, and he's an incredible human being from that. I think that you become more aware, more down to earth by being an East Village child.
You become more down to earth. You know, you learn how to look at people and find out if they're full of shit or if they're telling you the truth. You know, the streets teach you a lot that, you know, you don't really get in school. You can't get in an Ivy League college, or you can't get in the suburbs. Like, you know, you really have to be on your toes when you're on the streets, and it teaches you how to like look at people, and when you're communicating with them, look at them in their eyes, see if they're like telling you the truth or if they're trying to like scam you. You know, you learn a lot from the streets.
And then if you get some quote unquote Ivy League job, you can survive better in that job because
Way
you
better.
know if someone is playing you or
Exactly.
or you know, the truth. They always say the truth will set you free, or the foundation for the best things in life is the truth.
Yeah.
And if you have that,
Yeah.
and there's no more truth than the street.
Yeah, can't nobody like mess with you. You know, you know what's going on. You know, they can't pull the wool over your eyes.
But how about the people who are so good at bullshitting? You know, you know, those people learn how to fool you.
Well, I mean, I remember going to Times Square and seeing the guys playing 3-Card Monte, and then, you know, even as a kid, I learned to watch and look at the surroundings and see that they weren't by themselves. They had people that they were working with. So it was like they had a team that later on, like a couple of times I would see some of my relatives maybe get caught out there. I was still too young to play, but I would see like, oh, wait a minute. The other day when we passed by here, that lady was here as well. And she's like egging him on. She's like, yeah, I think it's here. I think it's there. I think it's that one. And she's playing along. And I'm like, oh, these people are a team. They working together. So that they scam a lot of people. Because if you think about it, people are not regularly going to Times Square. They'll probably like go once, twice a lot, you know, but we were going regularly.
Right, it's like that game you played, I forgot the name already, Spy Hunter or whatever it was. You had teams.
Yeah.
And you relied on each other. and now you take that game to the next level,
Yep.
and that's how you buy your food for that day.
That's right.
Or else you don't eat.
Yeah.
But I'm always interested, like when
That's the government
when
calling
you
us.
li-
Oh,
you-
they're like, what you know about that?
when you're living in these neighborhoods and you're growing older, it's like almost like a false narrative, false loyalty that might come to play. Like you growing up with some kids that, and it was like innocent games at the beginning, and maybe some things go further and get harder, and then all of a sudden there is a boundary, there is a line that if you cross, then you become at the point of no return, right? Like, how did you manage not to get to this? Like,
I see what you're saying.
Somebody became dealer, somebody went to
Yep,
prison,
yep.
somebody quite opposite isolated themselves and went completely denying his friends and his past and just went like different route. Like,
Right. I
how
see
did
what you're
you
saying.
always managed? Was it difficult for you?
Well, yeah, you basically talking about just victims of circumstance, victims of our environment. You know, people are not bad people. They just, when it comes to a point of survival, you got to figure out how you're going to survive. What type of things can you do to survive? And so a lot of times when it involves drugs, then you become a drug dealer because you need to make money. You're not able, there's not enough jobs out here at that time, especially. You know, people are just trying to find their way. Some people get addicted to drugs. And being around it, you have to be honest with yourself.
So how was it for you? How was it?
I mean,
for you?
I was all around it. I mean, I grew up, you know, going to a shooting gallery. You know, my aunt, you know, ran a shooting gallery, and as a child, I would run around and see junkies, you know, trying to find needles in their toes and all that stuff. Like, I was exposed to it at an early age.
So how come you didn't become part of it?
Well, it was something that I made that choice. It's not as easy. I can't tell you exactly how it happened, but I can tell you that it's not something that I wanted to be involved in, and I didn't pretend that I wanted to be involved in it. So at the same time, I didn't judge people for what they did because I understood that they had to make a living. They had to do what they had to do
And
to
they were
survive.
also your close people. It wasn't just
sure.
person.
And they
that
weren't
you didn't
bad
have
people. They were
relationship.
just trying to. They were trying to survive. We all were trying to survive.
So
I saw early on that I was an artist. I would look at, you know, television and watch, you know, Sábado Gigante early on. You know, I would look at, you know, these Spanish network channels with my grandma and sit there and dream that one day I would want to be on that network.
So there
that
was
would
something stronger, right? Stronger. Okay.
So that would be your early influence, maybe sitting with your grandmother. That
Yeah.
was an influence for you.
Absolutely, it was an influence for me because, you know, they were old sages. You know, they would kind of like give you little messages, or you would hear messages from uncles and aunts. You know, as a child, I grew up going to so many funerals that I was like, didn't understand why so many people were passing on, but I would want to know their story. So I would ask questions, and we had this one uncle who he passed away, unfortunately, but he was the one that kind of like shared a lot of the family history and a lot of the family stories. So as a child, I was curious. I would see these people passing away. I was constantly going to these funerals, and I would learn about my culture. I would learn about my history and how these people came from Puerto Rico, how they had their own farms, but they were duped into coming here and leaving their farms
How
behind.
were they duped in coming here?
It was like a whole thing of, you know, war and you know, people signing up for war, and then the people that were here that signed up for war, they would leave the factories, so then they needed workers to work the factories. So somehow they went to Puerto Rico and told the people, they recruited people, come here, you're gonna make a lot of money, it's easy, blah blah blah. However, the propaganda worked at that time, so a lot of people moved to the United States, and that's a lot of my family members moved here to the Lower East Side, to Allen Street, Eldridge Street. So you're talking about a kid that grew up just learning about my culture, learning about my history, and not wanting to go the route where I was just a statistic. I wanted to be more than that. And I think that the bug of being an artist and then seeing how people have this platform to perform and people watching them, early on, I started saying that this is more powerful than just you being an actor or a lyricist or some type of artist. If you're afforded this platform, you should use it to speak about something that has a
So
purpose.
who are your earliest influences in art and music?
And music, it was a lot of Latin artists. A lot of salsa music was played
Stuff
in
you
my
heard
home.
from your grandparents and your uncles? Or
Yeah, well,
in your house?
mostly my dad. Like, yeah, because it was a combination of hip hop and salsa. But my dad listened to mostly salsa music. So a lot of El Gran Combo. They have like, and those lyricists tell a lot of stories about their upbringing. So I was very intrigued. I learned how to speak Spanish, and the reason why I brought up the funerals is because I learned to read Spanish because of these funerals. Because,
how did that help
because they had these pamphlets that they would recite these hymns. And because I went so frequently, I started reading along the Spanish pamphlets and listening to what they were saying. And that got me into wanting to learn how to read Spanish. And then I would pick up the newspaper and learn how to pronounce the words. So I always try to figure out how can I use what's around me to better myself and then to be able to communicate with more people.
Now that was music. What about art?
Art, I would say as an actor, what got me open to acting is probably watching a lot of movies with my uncle that were like the Cowboys and Indian movies, or watching in Living Color, watching Chico and the Man. I'm little, but these are the shows that they're really into. So I kind of watch them and kind of see that they're laughing at certain things, and so then wrestling was big for me.
Right.
So I saw those people as actors and early on. So I was kind of seeing how they would perform, and Mean Gene Okerlund and all of these guys, and that was intriguing to me because I saw how these wrestlers took on these personas, and so I would practice and become a wrestler. My dad was Kamala, and he would come from behind the curtain and jump on us. It was a lot of theatrical stuff happening around my house, and so I think that early on that kind of gave me the bug to want to perform. And
did you have friends that your closest friends who also shared this love of music and art, or was it just you and your family? Because usually you get a partner who's going to help you. You're going to get away from the other folks by being with this kind of group.
Not really. I think that the Boys Club helped me in the sense that was more sports. So
and it was at the Boys Club
on Pitt Street. Yeah, we had a Boys Club on Pitt Street.
Right.
That one closed down, but I would say that one helped me in the sense of being an athlete or wanting to be involved in sports and the basketball team, and watching the boxing team and how they trained and that sort of thing, and that kind of helped me connect more with people. As far as acting, I didn't really have too many friends that were into acting, so I was kind of more of the person that was into trying to maybe write rhymes and recite other people's rhymes that I heard on the radio and that sort of thing. So I became a little bit popular by being able to memorize other people's lyrics and singing along to songs and stuff like that, and then eventually I wrote my own stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
Yeah.
Now, your father supposedly was a heavyweight boxer.
Yeah, my dad was a heavyweight boxer. He actually was in Customado's camp. Customado was probably most famous for training Mike Tyson and having a gym in the Catskill Mountains. But before he had that gym, he actually had a gym here on 14th Street. Right. Yeah, right here by the Palladium. It used to be PC Richards, and there's actually a sign that says Customado Way right where the gym was. It was called Empire Sports Club was the name of his team that he was a part of. So I remember going there probably 6 or 7 years old and smelling the sweat and the rusty locker rooms and the feet, the floors all moldy, and it was legit old school.
But you looked up to your dad
gym.
and
oh yeah, I looked up to him because I would see his passion for it. His art was boxing, and how he was so into it, and he really wanted to make that his lifelong dream was to be a heavyweight champion. And I always saw that in him, and he always, you know, talked about it, especially later on, you know, when he actually left boxing. You know, he was at that time, Cus D'Amato didn't want any of his fighters to be involved in any mob related fights. So he made it his business to keep those guys away from the gym. But when he wasn't around, they would come around, and my dad a couple of times got convinced to taking some fights. And while taking those fights, you also have to throw the fights. If they tell you you have to, you know, in the fourth round or whatever it is, that's when you got to do it. And so his life was threatened a lot of times.
Well, did you know that when you were a kid? Or
no, I learned it.
I
learned it later on because my mom would tell me stories, and then he would eventually like tell me things that happened and certain fights, and then eventually I learned that his mom and my mom found out about those death threats and convinced him to give it up. And so throughout his life, he basically was always reflecting on
Coming
that,
back to
and
this,
I want to come back. That was my dream, and he ended up, you know, drinking, and every time he would drink, that was always like his narrative. Over and over, the same thing over and over. It's like, I'm gonna make a comeback. You watch and that sort of thing. So,
how does that affect you in your life now?
Well, it affects me in the sense that I try to use his energy and his spirit to catapult me forward and things that I do, and I always try to use his energy as a sense of strength for me. My dad passed away in '97. He actually committed suicide, and I didn't accept that he did that till maybe 3 years ago. Because I did speak to a good friend of his that was always around him, and he would tell me little things about how my dad was feeling. My dad was definitely not the type to express how he was feeling. When he would drink, he would lash out with a loud voice, but never tell you what he was feeling internally. But later on, I understood that he never fulfilled his dream, and that was always eating him up inside. It was like he always that's what he wanted to do. So no matter what, he had a family, he had a good job, but what he wanted to do, his dream, was never fulfilled, and that was eating him up. And so as an artist, I understand how that is, and so you do yourself a disservice if you have some type of talent or you're good at something and you don't pursue that, because you're always going to be like regretting it.
So when you said 3 years ago, all of a sudden you understood it and you accepted that. How did that change? What did you let yourself do to be open to that acknowledgement?
As I always used to have dreams that were very vivid of him being around, and I used to be like, I always would end those dreams being upset at him. And being upset at him because he left, and the way he left, like it was like so sudden. And then I started thinking about a friend of his and how he would tell me how my dad was feeling, and I think it was more of me giving up, me being selfish and thinking like, why did you leave me? That's messed up. Because
it's interesting
he was
that
like
you
my
say
biggest,
selfish. But do you see now that it really isn't selfish?
No, it isn't. Like he was like my biggest fan. So for me, it was more like that was like my main. In my family, they don't understand what I do. Nobody really understands, especially now that I do so many things. Like I'm into activism and music and whatever. But as far as an artist, nobody really understood that. But he did understand. Like he was always my biggest fan. Little League Baseball, he would cheer me on. Come on, Tiger, you can do it. I would play him some of the songs that I re-record, and he was drinking and he would be dancing along and things like that. So I had that support system. So for me, it was like, damn, he left. Like he was the only close person that I cared to hear what he thought about my art or what I was doing, because he understood.
And he was also an artist, so you had close artist as a boxer, so you kind of had that connection.
Other people in my family are like, what are you wasting your time? Why, you're so smart. Why aren't you, going to school to be a lawyer or a doctor, whatever.
Well, that's like, people projecting.
Yeah, it's always them projecting, and it's something that, it kept me away from a lot of family gatherings because of that. Because it was always like, they didn't realize it, but it was like they're putting you down because they don't see and or understand your journey.
But in reality,
wasting time.
what I've learned in life is that they're actually not putting you down, but they're protecting themselves because it's a jealousy almost, or they wish they could have that freedom. They see that freedom and they want it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And it looks like this is what makes you similar to him, right? Like you're always passionate about what you do, and you definitely took it from him. Huh?
Yeah, for sure.
So what did
Like,
it do
carry
to you
on.
when you let this go? When you opened the, it's a pretty intense subject.
Yeah, yeah. It released a lot of like weight from me because I was almost also protecting and not wanting to believe that. So I was in denial. So it also allowed me to open up and to just be free with what I'm thinking and be more like open to talking about things instead of holding it in because I saw what it did to him.
When you let it out, was it dark when you first let it out, or was it flowery and beautiful, or a combination of both?
It was a combination, but it was more like I would cry a lot at home, not allow people to see me in that state, but it was a good release for me.
Yeah, because
to
that
accept
vulnerability
that.
is strength.
Yeah, it is. And then I actually spoke about it. Anthony Bourdain came to the Lower East Side to film his Parts Unknown, and Clayton Patterson was one of the main subjects.
The great photographer.
Great photographer in LES, and Clayton is always connecting people, so I was one of the people that he connected with Anthony Bourdain and the show, and he also connected a couple of the younger skateboarders. We eventually didn't make it on the show. They went a different direction, but part of it could have been, it's not spoken, but thinking about it now is like one of the reasons why they wanted me to speak on and tell my story, and I spoke about my dad and the history and what happened to my dad, and it was very like the producer connected with it. The producer shared that his dad also happened to him, so it was very touchy. And of course, eventually Anthony committed suicide himself.
Right.
So they kind of went a different direction, but that was the first time on a major scale that I actually shared it, knowing that it was gonna get to the masses.
Now, do you think if someone came up to you and said it'd be healthy to share it when you were younger, you wouldn't be able to do it? And the reason I ask that is, can you help kids today who are going through what you went through?
Sure.
Can you help them, or do they need to find out on their own?
You can help them by sharing your story for sure, but I mean, you can't tell someone this is the time for you to accept it. It's like, I think that is more like you come to terms with it. Everyone does it in a different way, but I can say that also being an artist and being a lyricist, writing a lot has helped as well.
Right, because we were talking earlier about it's like we were talking outside earlier about addiction and how you try to tell people to eat a certain way, or to a religion a certain way, or any of the sort of fear-based kind of lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's I've had so much loss as well, so I could relate. I mean, everyone can relate. We all have loss, but it's a fine line how you can share and help people by using your experience, by being an example, as opposed to being a preacher on the mountain who's trying to tell people this is the way to do it.
Yeah, I think people take heed more to seeing an example. And that's one thing for sure that I learned, is like being around a lot of my friends, that a lot of them, unfortunately got locked up, the ones that are still here. I was able to be an example to a lot of them when they would see me in music videos, and it gave them like a sense of hope. I've never, looked at them and spoke down to them or judged them for whatever decisions they made, because like I said, it was like everyone was partly trying to survive, and so they picked what they were good at or what they knew what to do. So for me, it's more like you can be an example by just like showing people what you do, and then if you want to maybe nudge them in a certain direction, then you do it in a way where they can see an alternative, as opposed to you saying this is wrong. As opposed to saying that, you say, well, you can also do it this way. This is
Right.
another way. This is another approach that you
Because
can
one of the things I admire about you is the way you're a giver, and you remind me of a lot of the people that I've got to meet through this sort of healthy world is giving and being an example. But to be able to do that and have people accept it, it's a real fine line.
Yeah, it is, and it is also difficult to get people to team up with you because.
Why do you say that? I know why, but
it's not popular. Like if you're doing certain things, you're giving back. Is for people to jump on board is something that's got to be popular. I learned that recently with the hurricane that happened in Puerto Rico.
Right.
Like early on, everybody is popular and everybody's talking about it. Oh, this is so messed up, and everybody's offering, how can I help, blah blah blah, and then it dies down. The media is not covering it
because they go on to the next soundbite or the next.
But I thought it was okay. I thought everything is fine, and it's not. And it's like now is when the real work happens because
you are very involved in it now, and you're helping community and so
my favorite player is Roberto Clemente.
We share that. We share that.
Pittsburgh Pirates, and then.
How did you first hear about Roberto?
Well, as a child, just like him, playing baseball and being so great, and then then later on learning about how he died as a humanitarian, just because he was sending aid to Nicaragua and it wasn't getting to the people, and he decided to load up this plane.
Do you know the story about Les Banos? Do you know Les Banos, the photographer?
Oh, the photographer that was supposed to
be on the plane. He was my friend.
Look at that.
And it's one of the greatest stories in the history of the world. Roberto loved Les Banos, and the two of them, Roberto would go out to the suburbs in Pittsburgh and bring Les with him to take photos because no one wanted to show what was going on. They wanted to cover it up, all the horrors that were going on in the ghettos outside of downtown Pittsburgh. So he brought Les with him and they would take photos. Well, he asked Les to come with him to Nicaragua on the plane that went down. And Les said, look, I'm covering the Steelers as well. If the Steelers lose next week against Oakland, I'm with you. I'll go. But if they win, I got to stick around for the following game. Well, that game happened to be the Immaculate Reception, where Franco Harris, in the last play of the game, won the game for Pittsburgh. So Les calls Roberto and says, hey, I can't go. And Roberto says, I know, I'm at the game. I saw it. Damn it. So Roberto goes on the plane, and that catch by Franco Harris saved Les Banos' life. And he's able to tell the incredible stories about Roberto. I remember my father took me to Shea Stadium to see the Mets, and we were poor, so we're sitting in right field. And that's where Clemente was. And I fell in love with him and did a book report on him because of and then I found out what an incredible human being he is. So how has Roberto inspired you and the kind of things you do for Puerto Rico?
Well, because as a man that has gone through so much and not being able to speak English and being black and, all the trials and tribulations that he went through as a player, but to still have a heart to help a country that he's not even from, it's like, it's special to me. It's like somebody that's thinking that this platform I'm blessed with it, and it was given to me to do something bigger than just me. So him dying on this plane, because he wanted to make sure, New Year's Eve, he could have been with his family. He wanted to make sure that the aid got to the people, and so he felt this was the best way, and he loaded up that plane and went with it, and it crashed. And this is just a noble man, and so I always look at him as somebody that used this platform for good. And another Pittsburgh player is Troy Polamalu, who does the same.
The Steelers.
From the Steelers. He's also a humanitarian, and these are people that use their platforms, to give back. And so I always look at that as opportunity for me, whatever I'm doing. Whenever I have, an opportunity to share something and give back, I'm doing that.
So what have you done for Puerto Rico? What are some of the things you've
So I used to travel a lot with Master Ace to Europe. And
so explain Master?
Master Ace is a legendary hip-hop artist.
Right.
And
how did you start that relationship?
So I'm the music director for a group called EMC, which is Master Ace, Wordsworth, and Strickland, and also for Master Ace as a solo artist. So we go on tour a lot in Europe, and while on tour, the hurricane happened, and I felt I was sad. I felt ashamed that I wasn't able to help. I wasn't able to be there. So as soon as I came back to New York, I started trying to figure out how I can help. No one really understood or knew how to help because it's all of these like red tape that's put in place. So, and the same thing that happened with Roberto Clemente, people were sending aid and it wasn't getting to the people. So you heard all of these stories, through social media and stuff like that. And I said, I need to be boots on the ground. I need to go out there and I need to help and I need to figure out what's going on. So that's exactly what I did. The first opportunity I got on a plane out there, bought some supplies. I started teaming up with different organizations.
What did it look like to you? How did it feel when you saw it?
It was destroyed. And not only that, it was just like the morale of the people. They were just like wiped out. It was just like really heavy. It was this like sad energy, hopeless energy. And then starting to hear about all the things that were going on with just disaster capitalism at its finest, that makes it even worse because it's like now I already witnessed it. So now there's no turning back for me. I have to help as much as I can. So then I started connecting with different organizations and, organizations, El Grito de Sunset Park, that collected over 2 million pounds of aid and food for Puerto Rico. And I started connecting with different organizations. I actually worked with an organization called Why Not Care here that started in the Lower East Side, founded by Martin Medina. And through that organization, I'm one of the core people in it with Lila Mejia. And Lila actually works with NIDIS, which is New York Disaster Interfaith Services. And she's the nucleus that put together the Puerto Rico Long-Term Recovery Group, which consists of various organizations that were chipping in to help out Puerto Rico. And till this day, we continue to help out. I was just there in April, and then they help a lot of the evacuees. Like, we get together, and the evacuees that have come to New York City, we provide help for them and try to find them housing and make sure that they have like necessities. And so I'm gonna go back to Puerto Rico on my 9th trip, but the most recent one was to help to rebuild a school, because that's important. Hundreds of schools are being closed in Puerto Rico. There's a debt crisis. That's
that was even before, and now it's even worse.
That was before, and the hurricane exacerbated it because now people need assistance and they're not getting that assistance.
How can people help?
These cuts. There's like a lot of different ways. So there's the next project that I'm doing is to help rebuild a school in Luquillo with my brother, Mr. Red. So they can hit me up on Instagram, social media. Polamalu, Powermalu. You can hit up El Grito de Sunset Park. That's an organization that's constantly working.
And spell
out there.
that for people as
El
well.
Grito, ELGRITODE, Sunset, SUNSET, Park, PARK. And we're actually working with a brother out in Yabucoa who donated 15 to 16 acres of land so that we can help with farming. And we're working on a project to bring kids from the city out there to teach them about agriculture and how to be self-sufficient.
I love that about you.
So,
now I want to make sure we get to different narratives. I mean, we could talk about Puerto Rico for 3 hours. And it would be worth it. If we talk for weeks, and it'd be worth it.
Shout out to Team Playa and Barrio Playa, because that was the in Añasco. They were here earlier for the Puerto Rican Day Parade. They actually, some of the members made a trip, and that was the last project we did, was to help rebuild the school out there with Project Refuge PR.
Yeah, because people are gonna. I hope that people will contact you and be able to help out, because people still. There are people in this country that don't realize that Puerto Rico is part of the United States.
Yeah, it is, and it's sad because we need to cancel that debt. It's a debt that was placed on the island. That, the authorities or the officials just kept borrowing money, and now these bondholders are coming for their money, and it's like the people of Puerto Rico are already choking. Like they made all these cuts, and they're continuing to make cuts. How are these people supposed to survive?
They can't. They can't. I mean, it always comes down to money and greed, and it's how do we fight that? By just being good humans. And
we need allies.
We need allies.
We need people to understand how serious the situation is in Puerto Rico.
You know, go ahead,
Before
Vlad.
we moving on, I always kind of think about you, and I have a question that I never ask you. Like hearing so much of good that you do and how involved and passionate you are. Like, how come you never became a politician, like or community worker? Like, there are so many people who take this career turn and just becoming professional politicians. Like, I don't know, take it as a career or community worker, activist, right?
Right.
And
it's a good question.
I always see you doing very practical thing, and every time I come to you with a project or something, you're like, Larman, is it for real? Like, are those people good? Like, what? And remember, we had this conversation about certain projects that we wanted to get involved with, and you, like, we always like kind of measure, is there is integrity there? Like, so you're always looking for something completely practical, when in fact, with your reputation and popularity in the neighborhood, you could have just be, I don't know, counselor or
but you know, the people who are you don't want to become a politician because it gets in the way of getting things done. Right.
I hope this is an answer, because
that's
I
exactly
always
what it is.
see him being so practical, being so concrete. Like, what is it that, like, that to the point that now he comes in for help or for something. I was like, wow, you got me. You know that I always involve.
And that's why he's here today, because of the help.
Absolutely.
I've read everything, the help that you have brought in there.
Right.
But if
But
you
it's
want to
not
answer
a-
the question
yeah,
that he
it
had.
would be- I'm really curious.
It's exactly that. It's like, you know, I feel like I can be more of service to people if I'm not in a system, if I'm not boxed in. Like, since younger, I did so many things, and now I do so many things. I don't want to be boxed into just one thing. I want to be able to do as many things and be able to, you know, explore and talk and touch as many people as possible that I can inspire to just be better people. And when you deal with politics, you gotta, you know, be able to, you know, do this and do
Align
that
with somebody,
and, you know, and align with people. And I'm not into that. I've never been into that because I don't see sincerity in that. You
Right.
know? And it's like,
And you know
it's
what
never
is the
making
sign on
money.
the gym when you pass by? You are the biggest threat to the machine.
You're the biggest threat to the machine, because
And tell us what you mean by that. I understand.
Because it's like, if you're in the system, you know, they want to control you how they want you to be. You know, when you're outside of the system, then you can navigate and be able to do whatever you want, and they don't like that. So that's
It's like your family telling you can't be good at what you do.
because that's part of that fear. That's part of the control. So you're better off doing the work from the outside,
Right.
And because you're gonna get way more done, because you don't have to be political and say, oh, I'm gonna, you know, this person's not gonna be happy with this, or this person's not gonna give me funding, whatever. You know, my thing is, like, if my people are good, I'm always gonna be good. So that's why I always try to do things. Especially if it's community based, then let it be free for the community. You know,
And it doesn't mean that you are not collaborating, right? Like last night, you told me you went to meeting with police chief, right? So
I'm always thinking of ways how to bring the community together, how to open up dialogue, so people can understand each other, break those stereotypes, break down those walls. What we say at Overthrow, I have like a few different slogans, and using Overthrow as the
and let
lead
people know
word.
what Overthrow is.
It's
You're
like,
throwing that out. but
Okay,
yeah.
Overthrow is a boxing gym. We have actually two. The first one was at number 9 Bleecker. It was the old Yippie Museum, and it was where the Youth International Party used to meet. On Bleecker Street between Bowery and Elizabeth, and now we have one on Grand Street where the old trash bar used to be. But basically, it's a boxing gym, but we stay true to the roots of it. It was an artist activist hub. So I use Overthrow as a platform to be able to bring different projects that are community-based, projects that give people a voice, give people an opportunity to talk about issues that matter, social justice issues, you know, issues about domestic abuse, anything that people are afraid to speak about, or that corporations are afraid to touch on. We like to take those on, and we have our platform as the boxing ring. So our thing
Gotcha.
is, what are you fighting for? And if it's something that aligns with our beliefs, then we're going to give you that platform to do it. So we say
fantastic.
overthrow the the misconceptions, overthrow the lies, overthrow the hate, overthrow what divides, just overthrow all of it. The foundation of Overthrow it was a publication that was called the Yipster Times. The Yipster Times was founded in that building, and then High Times magazine was founded in that building.
Right.
Tom Facade wrote for the Yipster Times. So High Times magazine and Yipster Times coexisted. So to differentiate, Yipster Times became Overthrow.
I got
And
you.
so that's where the name Overthrow came about.
And so you're working a lot with athletes and running.
Yep, I do a lot of running. I have a big running community. It's a worldwide running community. I'm part of the Bridge Runners, which are the founders of this urban running collective. We call each other crews. And so all over the world, you have running crews, and we basically explore the city, through running. We go to different events, we run over bridges, we run on the streets, and through that movement, we were able to connect with people around the world. So now I can go to Yugoslavia, which I was 2 years ago, and connected with some running crews out there that actually used running to bring their countries together. So
It's like an exploring tour about the
yeah,
city,
and
right?
so now every country, if you take a trip out there, these run crews will show you their city through running. And this is something that we started 16 years ago, and we started right here in the Lower East Side.
That's great. All right, now let's talk about what you do here at the Organic Grill. You eat vegan food.
Oh yeah, I
No,
love
yeah,
I love the Organic Grill, man. Every opportunity I get, I tell people
This is the
because
place where people come.
it's so delicious. And then I tell people, I was like, look, because that's another thing too. Like you were saying that I was in a meeting yesterday in Brooklyn, meeting with the NYPD because we're trying to figure out ways to open up dialogue, and one of the ways is I'm supporting a 5K that they're doing. June 22nd is actually for police officers with special needs, children. And so we're supporting this organization called With Arms Wide Open. And so I'm always getting hit up, and people are like, we want to take you to lunch. We want to take you to dinner. So every opportunity I get, I say, listen, you want to take me to lunch? You want to take me to dinner? I'll meet you at the Organic Grill. So right after that meeting, I had a meeting here at the Organic Grill with some other sisters that are into doing stuff to help dogs and to help build dog houses, for dogs that are left outside and they they need shelter, and so I try to get in line with people that I feel like is important. They have important agendas that or important issues that need to be put out there. So I make sure that the meetings happen at the Organic Grill.
All right, so let's talk about the food. You have a lot of friends like I do that are non-vegans, and again, you can't stand on the mountain and yell veganism.
Yeah. So what I do?
So how did you first become vegan? What influenced you, and what do you tell people who are your friends that question it?
I would say that it happened organically. How did it happen? So I'm always dabbling into different things. I'm into fitness, so I'm into working out and figuring out different foods that fuel me and learning about these foods. And so on that journey, I started thinking about, I started learning about maca and chia seeds and all this natural foods, and then I started learning about intermittent fasting. And so through intermittent fasting, what I started to learn is that when I broke the fast, I would reintroduce certain foods into my system, and I wouldn't get a good reaction from them. So I found out.
What would you reintroduce?
Like meat,
fish or meat, right?
Milk,
right.
Chicken, whatever it was like what I was used to because I was into weightlifting. So I was told that this is what you're supposed to eat.
Right.
In order, to be healthy, and you got to eat it this amount of times a day, blah, blah, blah. And so I was going with that. But when I was doing intermittent fasting and I was reintroducing these foods, I would feel like a little pain in my side. I would feel like a little gassy. And these are things that I would ignore in the past. And I wasn't ignoring them anymore. So I started looking more into it, and I started eliminating these things. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to do away with this. So then what I started doing is I'm going to try to be vegetarian for a little bit. And then I started playing around with being vegetarian, started for a couple of months, started feeling like more focused. I started feeling good energy. I was able to work out. I was able to run. Then I started dropping down in weight, which I love running, so that helped me out because it was less pressure on my knees. Then pescatarian, I was messing around with fish because I love salmon, and I was really like into it. And then little by little, as I continued my intermittent fasting, those foods I would like not even crave them anymore. So then I started trying to like figure out what kind of foods can I introduce and eat. And then I knew people like John Joseph, so I would always like pick his brain and ask him about certain foods, and you know he's always like into like telling you what kind of stuff, and he speaks our language.
He was the one to introduce him to Organic Grill.
Okay.
Yeah, John. So shout out.
Shout out to John, man, because you know that brother is like he's from the streets, so you know we speak the same language.
Right.
So when I see him and how he's able to turn his life around, and you know, dude is like an Iron Man, and he's just just badass dude. Like dude's an artist and everything that I am. And
singer
just
and
seeing him,
lyricist,
on that level. And then we do a lot of things together too. Like we do this tumor, this 10K tumor stomp to help one of the kids that he's friends with that has cancer.
Right.
And so through running, we connect and we bring awareness to these situations. So we always supporting one another. So I'm always like looking at his page, and I always text him and ask him questions. And then he introduced me to Organic Grill, and then just trying the food. I'm like, this.
But I wanna just tell the story how it all happened. So you came in and we hit it off, and then I asked John, like, what's his name? He said, I don't know, Power. Then you ask me, what's his name? I said, Power. I always call him Power. Then the guys ask me, like, what's going to be a podcast? Who is going to do it? And I said, Power.
I thought he said Magic. Your name was Magic. So we have a little joke between us that you're Magic Power. That's your name.
Magic Power.
Yeah. So tell us about this nickname, like where it came from.
So my uncle named me. So basically I was at an early age, I would run around in the streets and go to different projects, and I was always able to navigate to these different projects and be around all the stuff that we spoke about earlier, but not fully get sucked in to where that became who I was. But I was still able to be around it, and somehow that allowed me to be a mediator of sorts, because I was able to, if this person had an issue with this person, but I was friends with both of them, and somehow I ended up being in a place where they were both at. Naturally, it became like a mediator of sorts, because then they wouldn't beef with each other anymore.
Right.
And
you're the guy that they both trust.
Yeah, and it even happened later on where there was a situation where these two graffiti artists had beef, because that was a big thing of, you know.
And now that you're vegan, there's no beef.
No, there's no beef at all. So, but actually, you know what? I think that has helped me a little bit too with later on with, you know, being vegan, because I'm more calm. I'm more focused, you know, whereas before, I don't know, I think the foods had me like mad.
Yeah,
like,
the blood of the steak.
Like, I don't know. It could be, I think it has something to do with that, because I'm very spiritual as well, but I try not to push that on people, but you know, it definitely is something that helps me be who I am. And so I think like the eating aspect of it.
But I interrupted you. You were talking about how your name came about.
So at an early age, he saw that and was like, that's power. If you're able to navigate to these different places, you know, the 5% Nation is a derivative of the Nation of Islam, which is a derivative of Islam. And in the 90s, it was very prevalent in the streets of New York City. And so that's one of the attributes, power, refinement. So
very nice.
Basically, that's where the name came about. Very
cool. Well, you know, we could talk for hours, and I'm sure we will. I have a feeling we'll be back here, and we'll share some good food. But one of the things that we were talking about that was very interesting earlier is about evolving as a human being. I mentioned, Kevin, who was going to host the Academy Awards, and he said some horrible things years ago. And then he went, in this society, we're not giving people a chance to evolve and grow. Kevin Hart, and we're just trashing people and putting them down and saying, okay, you're goodbye forever. And so let's talk about that just for a moment, from your opinion of evolving and how we could help kids today to learn. If you make a mistake, your life isn't over. You learn from it.
Absolutely. There's a lot of judgment that goes on with the social media, especially. What people don't understand is like it's a form of programming, just like anything else. If this phone, these apps are programmed, and the more that you're on them, you're gonna start getting programmed. And so a lot of people base a lot of things they do off of if it's popular or not. So if people are attacking somebody, then and it's popular to do that, then people tend to jump on board with that.
Bullying
and
becomes
what everything is. And unfortunately for kids, they base their entire existence off of that. So there's kids that are fighting or at worst killing each other because of something that was said on social media, because they think that's the end all be all, or killing themselves. So I think it's more of being truthful, and a lot of artists should step up, because these are the people that these kids look up to, and should be truthful as to what's really going on. Like, be truthful with the lyrics that they're speaking about, you know, sharing that these are just stories, that this is not reality, this is not my reality, like I don't live this way, but I'm just sharing a story. That I think is more of being out more giving with your talent, as opposed to just relying on putting stuff out on social media, but actually going and visiting schools, doing tours, and talking to these kids, you know, talking to them about how failure is part of you becoming successful. You know, it's like, it's not the end all be all, it's just a way of learning, and you know, you grow from that. And I think is more of like being more open and speaking to these kids. I get an opportunity, and I'm blessed with the opportunity to perform a one-person show, and I do it at high schools and colleges. It's called County of Kings, and it was written by Lemon Anderson, and it kind of tells his journey as a child, and everything that he went through, and how
did you find that? How did that speak to you? And how did you find it, and how did it speak to you?
Well, I was part of my acting coaches, Win Hanman, and so I was taking some acting classes. He's a legendary acting coach. He's 97 now, I believe. And so through that, he has a program that he started called Literature to Life. And basically what they do is they hire actors to bring books to life. So you learn the book, Secret Life of Bees, Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde, The Kite Runner. There's a bunch of books that they hire actors, and the actors travel to these high schools and colleges, and they perform. So at that time, while I'm taking his classes, he tells me about this program that he started, and one of the books that was developed in that program is County of Kings by Lemon Anderson.
Right.
So he has me, you know, doing some of the parts and talks to me about it, and eventually he was preparing me to take over that role, because at the time Lemon was looking to do more writing, and he wasn't interested in performing it as much. So I eventually met with Lemon, and I knew Lemon from, you know, back in the days, going to New York Poets Cafe and Lyricist Lounge and all of these showcases and stuff. So we always would see each other, but that was an opportunity for me to actually talk to him.
How are the kids responding to this?
They love it. Like, the kids is something that they can relate to, is a story that it talks about so much hardship, but then it kind of like leaves off where he found his calling as a poet. And so you kind of like get to see how art is so important, and how giving kids an outlet to express themselves is so important. So I think that, so what happens is, after I perform the show, we actually speak to the kids and have them do like a little bit of writing, exercise, kind of like get to talk about what they're going through, maybe share with their friends, and kind of like help them collaborate. And it just like opens them up to another opportunity, another way that they can express themselves and not keep it in.
Right, and not feel weird to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because it is I thought when I was a little kid that I was a freak, because I always thought artistically. And then when I went to school and met people who were like me, as the older I got, and then went to college at Emerson in Boston, and everybody was the freak like me. And then that's when I blossomed. And now I wish I would have had someone like you coming to my school when I was in elementary school. And reading that, it would have probably changed my life in a different way.
Yeah, and that's so important, because these kids base their life off of this social media. Like, that becomes their world. they're so like closed off that becomes their world. So if somebody disses them and disrespects them in any way, and people are laughing at it or whatever, they think
That's the
that
end of the
it's
world,
over.
right.
It's
Right.
like-
Now, how do you use social media to further your
So I use
message?
social. I try to be an example and use it in a way where I'm gonna speak about issues that are going on, bring awareness to a lot of these issues. I'm gonna share my music. I'll share my poetry, but at the moment, what I am really doing is what I'm really sharing about. If I'm celebrating my pride of being Puerto Rican this weekend in the Puerto Rican Day Parade, I'm gonna do that. But at the same time, 3 days later, I'm in the federal court, inside the courtroom, listening to these bond hearings, the trials that are going on, and I'm finding out what's really happening so I could share that with the people. If I'm at Overthrow, I'm with Met the Man, and he's shooting a music video, I'm gonna share that aspect of it. We're doing a class on mental illness, and we're doing a panel discussion. I'm sharing that. So I'm using the platform to talk about all types of issues that I'm really involved with. So
Yeah,
that people
that's pretty
can
great.
kind
But
of,
it's
like,
also
get to
about
know who I am.
transparency too,
Right.
Like
Yeah.
you are very authentic, and I hope everybody saw it and passionate, and it just makes you transparent and let people in.
Yeah.
That's important.
It's about being honest. Rest in peace to Nipsey Hussle. He was a phenomenal artist that was using his platform. He stood in his community, opened up businesses, gave people an opportunity who came out of prison, who wouldn't be given an opportunity to work. He had a co-working space. He did all of these things. He was planning to meet with the LAPD to figure out how they can, merge community relations and really discuss how they can better the community. Like all of these things. This is somebody that was using his platform for that purpose. He wasn't caught up in the hoopla of just being an artist and being part of the machine. He was being outside of the machine and creating his own machine.
Yeah, it
And
sounds
I
like
think-
your story.
Yeah, it's important, because you have to dare to take those risks, right? To do and talk about things that are not popular.
Right, and I want to read this thing that you wrote. Most people don't dare come near dark alleys or urban neighborhoods, but his instinct is to explore these paths with blind ambition, his meaning yours, welcoming the unknown into his world of curiosity.
Right on.
I think that's it's sort of like, that commercial with the army, like those people are running toward the battle, and you're one of those folks who run toward the battle as opposed to running away from it.
That's right.
And I listened to your interview, and when you were saying your story about how you became involved in club and how you were giving flyers,
yeah.
and
15 years old.
then like when he was like 10, and then he found a way that nobody is announcing those performers, and he would write it up and he would show it to venues and say, I can say this. So you gradually increased your role and involvement, and you said something that really stuck in my head, that little opportunities create unlimited potentials. And it's like you were not given much, but you were like taking it little by little, and those little openings, little opportunities became unlimited potentials. And look, like every time I'm listening to you, oh wow, he's doing this now, he's doing this now.
It's
And
wonderful.
it's not like you're dropping one thing and you go to another. You're just trying to do so multiple, so
And
many
the way you do that
diverse
is you
things.
compartmentalize. You get to do this. The only thing that matters in the world right now is what we're doing here.
Right.
And then to the next thing we have to do, that's what only matters in the world then. And finally, I just want to ask, what's next for you that you want to do that you're not doing now? Like, not what's going on next week, but what haven't you done that you want to do next in your life? What is the next step for you?
I mean, it's a continuation of the work that I'm doing. Is really, for me, that's what I'm happy doing.
But what is scary to you that you are going to run to next? What are you afraid of doing, or not afraid of, but what fear are you running to? Because you're the ultimate guy who runs toward fear. It's hard.
Yeah,
it's a hard
it's
question.
hard. It won't be. I think is based off of just doing something in another country, maybe go like I really want to go to Africa, because there's a big running community in Kenya that's in need of shoes, and I connected with a crew in Italy that has an organization called In Your Shoes that I participated. I did a voiceover for this beautiful video that they did. It's not really fear driven, it's more like I want to be able
right.
to
And when I
help
say
more
fear, I
people.
mean it's the things that most people wouldn't take the time to do.
Right, yeah, because
you're not that guy. You're
for me it's like I like fear. I use that as it's energy, so I just kind of like switch it, and then I use it as an urgency to do something.
You turn it around and make it a positive.
Yeah, I learned that from performing. Like it's like the fear of right before going on stage or right before doing a public speak. You feel that little butterflies, and it's like fear, but you flip that energy,
and make it work for you.
Like I
And
have
that
to do
was
this. I
in
have to
one
say
of
this.
your songs that I heard, Pressure, right?
Oh yeah, Pressure. Yep, I have a song called Pressure. So that's another thing too. That might be my next thing. Is actually I have so many writings that I've yet to release, whether it's in the form of poetry or actually recording them. So one of the next things that I may start doing, which would be a good answer for your question, is starting to release them on social media, just like doing a verse and reciting it.
Great. And how can people contact you? Find you?
They could just hit me up on social media, on Instagram, Polamalu, Powermalu. Same thing on Facebook, Power, separate word, Malu. Email power@overthrownyc.com. I just started putting out a nonprofit that I'm working on. It's called Artists, Athletes, Activists. And that's because everything that I'm involved with has something to do with artists, athletes, activists.
Right.
So that's going to be an organization that I'm going to start promoting.
We can't thank you enough for being our guest.
Thank you very much.
It's a real pleasure just to talk with you, and inspirational.
And we definitely need to bring him back, huh?
Yeah, well, just at least to sit around and have some food and talk about life, and inspire each other.
Let's do it, man.
Well, that was OG Talk for this week. Polamalu, of course, our good friend Vlad. Thanks, everybody, and have a lovely day.
OG!
Take care.
Thanks, OG.